The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Now, I want you guys to know the lengths that we go to here at Hoop Ball to make sure that you guys have the best quality content available. This is Tuesday's Fantasy NBA Today. I am Dan Besbris. This is a Hoop Ball presentation. What I mean by that is, well, on Monday, I prepped, reached out, and recorded 4 individual segments that are coming up over the course of this week. It was a busy Monday. Really excited the lineup, by the way. One of those 4, you're going to be hearing on today's podcast. We talked to Mike Pellichet on Monday of Bourbon Street Shots. We talked to Mike Trudell of Lakers.com and ESPN LA here in Los Angeles, Sportsnet LA. We talked to Mike Bossetti of Raptors Rapture. We talked to Philip Rossman-Reich of Orlando Magic Daily. And, well, you get to hear me talk about a mock draft a little bit. All of that coming up this week here on Fantasy NBA Today. Coupon codes by the bowlful as the era of the guest continues. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the Monday show. Excited to get that one out to you. That was with Michael Knight of Space City Scoop, if you missed yesterday's pod. We did have a coupon code on that podcast. Not going to tell it to you again. You got to go listen to it if you want that coupon code. We're going to be dropping them here and there. Most of the shows you listen to will have one somewhere in there. Maybe not all of them, but some. So stay tuned in. Keep that attention. Keep those antennae picking up the signal. What's on the tap for today's podcast? Well, we talked about rounds 1 through 3 of the Hoop Ball Forum mock draft on yesterday's pod. So today we're going to get into the next couple of rounds. The hope is 4, 5, and 6 for today's show. But, of course, everything is a little bit time-dependent. I obviously get sidetracked a lot. A lot. So we're going to try to get through the next 36 picks on that one. I also want to remind everybody that listener leagues are open. We haven't done that in a little bit on the podcast. We had that big initial wave of all of you ultra-crazy lunatic diehards that listen to this podcast throughout the entire offseason, and we love you guys. But now there are some of you that are returning to the show. Those of you maybe that listened last year that didn't listen through the offseason, maybe people finding it for the first time. If you want to be in some fantasy leagues with fellow podcast listeners, Hoop Ball readers, and pros, there are 2 ways to do it. Number 1, there is a forum thread, although I think it's been bumped down a tiny bit by more recent threads. I think it's called Hoop Ball Listener Leagues. You can go in there, you can express your interest, and Neil Rochlani, one of our fantastic co-hosts here on Fantasy NBA Today, will reach out and get you placed. The other way to do it is to tweet at me. Tweet at me, tweet at Neil. At Dan Besbris, at Ball with Neil. We'll get you figured out, situated. We have 9 category. We don't have any 8s this year. We'll probably expand next season. We have 9 category roto, 9 category head-to-head, both free and $50 entry leagues. So if you want to test your mettle and go for some monetary winnings, awesome. If you just want to battle for fun and get to know some other Hoop Ball people, pros, listeners, readers, whatever, you can join up one of the free leagues and see how you fare at I don't want to say a lesser level of competition. I think innately we all pay closer attention when money's on the line. So we'll just safely say slightly less. So please do reach out if you want to get into those listener leagues. We have about 120, 130 people in them already and looking to add more. We're just going to keep adding until we run out of time, basically. Rate and review the podcast if you like what you hear. That's the other thing we try to remind everybody of. You can do that via the podcast app on your mobile device. You can do it through iTunes on your computer. You can do it through Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, Facebook. Basically every place we put the podcast. If you want to go give it a thumbs up or 5 stars or what have you, we'd be most grateful. Before we get into the mock draft stuff, we got a special treat. He is a man you know because he follows the Lakers literally on the team plane. He is their sideline reporter, and he is also a fantasy junkie. Bet you didn't know that he was a degenerate like the rest of us. I'm going to keep the terminology the same here on the pod. The era of the guest. That's what we're in right now as we lead up towards NBA opening night, and we got ourselves a big fish on the hook. We're reeling him in. He is Mike Trudell. Welcome. Well, I would say welcome back, but you actually joined us on the Lakers podcast before. Mike, of course, for those of you that are in Los Angeles, such as myself, you know him from a number of different places. I see your face everywhere I look. But for those that are across the country, you are on Spectrum Sportsnet, you're on ESPN LA, you are the Lakers sideline reporter, you are many things, and today you are fantasy expert. Welcome to the pod.
My pleasure to be here with you, Dan. How's everything with you, man?
Hanging in there. It's been an interesting offseason, probably a little bit less tumultuous than last offseason for most NBA teams, but not really for the Lakers. You guys... and I don't know if I can use this terminology to say you guys, but you are affiliated with the team. You guys got a decent player on the club this coming year.
Yeah, you've heard of LeBron?
I've heard of LeBron. I sometimes I mess up his last name. There are so many LeBrons out there. That had to be pretty exciting. I assume Lakers land is kind of going crazy right now.
Yeah, no question about it. Everybody's at this point just excited for the season to start, because it's now been over 2 months since he actually made the decision to join the Lakers, and it's just been all this time to think about how he's going to fit in and what players are going to start around him and how many minutes he's going to play. Is he going to play more center? On and on and on and on. And I think at this point we're all just ready for things to actually get going, and that's where we're at. So in a week from Monday when we're recording this, of course, is media day for the Lakers, and the first game is on the 30th. So, yeah, I'm just ready for it to get rolling so we can stop the speculating and start watching.
Speculating is so much fun, though. Mike, I think
I do like speculating. I'm just saying I would prefer to speculate after seeing him play.
Yeah, I think
speculate more.
We're pretty jazzed. I mean, I'm not so secretly a pretty big Lakers fan. I'm very pragmatic when it comes to Lakers and fantasy sports, but this is pretty neat. And that's, I think, maybe downplaying it a tiny bit. So you asked hypothetical questions in there that I think a lot of fantasy folks are interested in the reality answers to. Do you have any inclination as to what this season is going to bring for LeBron? Because, I feel like we've heard this is sort of an opportunity for him to not handle the ball as much. This is a little bit of a respite year for LeBron while the Lakers work on free agent number 2. I don't know. The competitive juices, could LeBron ever really take a season and rest a little bit? I don't know.
I've thought about that for LeBron for the last several years. And then, of course, last year he played all 82 games and played 38 minutes a night. And so, therefore, was really a fantasy monster. Depending on your settings and what kind of league you play, which is always, of course, important if you're roto or head-to-head, but he had to be somewhere in the top 10, whether that was 3, some as high as 3 in some scoring systems, or, as if you're doing more of an average thing, then he probably would have been in the maybe number 6 or 7. But that for his status and how good he is and how good he has to be heading into the playoffs, where he's never missed a playoff game, it's remarkable how much value you can still get out of LeBron. And in fact, I just did this piece the other day for Lakers.com looking at how many games the guys had played according to the percentage that he could have. So a better way to say that is LeBron has played in 95.1% of his games, regular season and playoffs combined. And there's only a couple of players in the entire NBA, and most of them are far younger than him, that have better percentages of games played. And as we can now probably already surmise, Russell Westbrook with this most recent knee scope, that's going to be something I think that makes him play more like 60 games than 82. And that can be the difference right there between first place and sixth place in fantasy. If your best player is going to have to miss a bunch of games. So that's one of the first things I always think about with LeBron is that he's so durable and he's so physically gifted and so invests so much in maintaining his body that he's always, to me, a very safe pick in that sense. And, so where he ends up in terms of points, assists, rebounds, steals, blocks, field goal percentage, all that, I don't think that drops off much from last year, although I would be surprised if he played all 82 and 38 minutes again. I think this Lakers team is deeper than that and younger than that, so maybe that production drops just a little bit, but I wouldn't say that by too much.
Is he going to play center this year?
Well, center in 2018-19 is much different than center a few years ago.
Very true.
I mean, if you just watch the Western Conference Finals even and watch Golden State play Houston, Look, Capella definitely played his 25 minutes a game, but other than that, there were basically all wings that were playing at the 4 and the 5. Durant played the 5 at certain times. Obviously, Draymond Green at times. And so I think in that sense, LeBron can absolutely play the 5, and he will. But I don't know if it really ends up impacting from a fantasy standpoint. Like, as long as LeBron James is on the floor, he's going to produce numbers. And I don't care what position. If he's down low, theoretically at the 5, well, he's not going to be, because he's going to be probably more of a space 5 in that sense and try to get opposing bigs to come out of the perimeter. So if they play Utah and Rudy Gobert is on the other side, it's not like LeBron's going to be going down there banging with him the whole time. They'll trap and they'll try to pull Rudy Gobert out away from the rim so that that's an advantage for other players to be able to make basket cuts. So we could get into a whole nother basketball discussion as to how the playing the 5 works, but from a fantasy standpoint, I don't think it's that important.
So you said one thing in there that I want to use as our thread here, and which is, as long as LeBron's on the floor, he's going to be putting up numbers. What does that mean for some of these other guys now? We've seen that, obviously LeBron gets guys better shots. He makes the players around him better, but at the same time, the usage just can't be the same when you have LeBron on your team. So, a guy like Lonzo Ball, who looked like from a fantasy standpoint, just this crazy high ceiling because of giant defensive numbers from a point guard. I think we've all seen the very well-produced video of Lonzo's slightly kind of rejiggered shot. Brandon Ingram, a guy who, succeeded last year at taking it to the hoop an awful lot. How do these young guys exist around LeBron James in the only formula we've seen in the past, right, Mike, is guys that can shoot around him, and the Lakers have guys that can do other things as well. How does that coexistence work from a fantasy standpoint or reality?
Yeah, well, I would say that one thing with LeBron, when you average 28 points, 9 assists, and 9 rebounds, there's not that much to go around for everybody else. There's just not. Like the last year, so Isaiah Thomas was only there for 15 games, and he was second on the Cavs in assists with 4.5. Dwayne Wade was at 3.5. He was there for 46 games. And then George Hill was 2.8, right? Jose Calderon, 2.1. So it just, were not a lot of opportunities for other guys to make plays because LeBron had the ball so much. Points, same thing. So Kevin Love averaged 17.6 as the number 2 spot in Cleveland. And then, Thomas was around 15 points while he was there. Clarkson got up to 13, even in terms of rebounds. So, Kevin Love actually did lead the team 9.3. And then LeBron was at 8.6 and Tristan Thompson 6.6. So you have to think about that in terms of the Lakers now. Is LeBron, if his minutes though go from 38 to 35, which I suppose they could, that's going to allow for other guys to have a few more numbers, but it just all depends on how much LeBron wants to play the scoring versus passing balance. And my feeling is that since they have Lonzo, since they have Rondo, those guys are such better playmakers than anybody else that was on the Cavs. The Cavs did not have it. Isaiah Thomas is not a pure point guard. He really likes to shoot more. Same thing with Wade when he had the ball. George Hill, same thing, not really going to create shots for guys. So I would expect LeBron's scoring, to stay the same, if not even go up a bit, and his assists to go down some, just because of the nature of the Lakers. Not only do they have, I mentioned the point guards, but they also have Brandon Ingram, who's great at making plays for teammates coming off the ball. So those are the types of things you have to think about. And I would really, depending on when your draft is, I would really pay attention to training camp and to the preseason games to get a look at how these things are going to fit. I can give you some guesses now, but I really think they're going to use training camp to gauge, how many minutes is Rondo going to get next to Lonzo? How many minutes is or aside from Lonzo? Same thing with Brandon Ingram on the wing, or KCP and Josh Hart. Like there's so many guys that can play that it's really going to be important to figure out what Luke Walton's going to do. Yeah,
it's a weird mixture, not necessarily in a bad sense. I mean, it's cool to be a Laker fan right now. You got all these talented young guys, but it's a strange combo of kind of having a lot of mouths to feed, which is sort of that we talked about it on this podcast with relation to the Miami Heat, now the Boston Celtics. But at the same time, it's a lot of mouths to feed, and it's one mouth in LeBron that is going to get fed on a nightly basis. So is there anyone else on this Lakers team that you would target in a fantasy draft? I sort of struggle to come up with a guy that's going to fall far enough in fantasy drafts where you're like, okay, well, maybe I'll take a flyer on him. For me, I guess you'd think maybe Lonzo, just because you don't need him to score to be valuable. But where are you looking on this team? Anyone else besides LeBron worth drafting?
Well, so what I would do with Lonzo is I would probably not draft Lonzo, but I would trade for him after the first month of the season. Because I think that his knee is the Lakers have not sort of given an official report yet as to what his status is, but he hasn't been playing 5-on-5 yet. And so I think that if it takes him a little bit of time to get going in that sense, he's still going to get drafted because of the name, right? And some people are going to assume that he's going to start. But what if he doesn't start and Rondo's playing some bigger minutes earlier and LeBron's taking a bigger share of the playmaking duties? I believe in Lonzo's talent, though, and ultimately I think by whether it's the second month of the season or later in the season, I think he's going to emerge and really be a valuable piece and somebody that we're going to see a lot of minutes for. So I would probably want him on my roster, but not necessarily right away. I would wait until an owner drafts him and then gets frustrated because he's not, if he's not as productive right away as is expected. But if I can give you a couple of guys, I mean, Brandon Ingram to me, his February was great last year. If you happen to own Ingram in February, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, 18 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, great percentages. Now, he didn't shoot a high volume of threes, but the ones that he took, he made at a nearly 40% clip. And he's the kind of guy that comes back every summer and has added a bunch of stuff to his game. I think his shot's going to be even cleaner. I think he's added some muscle. So Ingram to me is a guy that, granted, he still has that kind of sexy name where it's a number 2 pick and, somebody thinks that he can take a jump. So those guys always go a little bit earlier. But I do think that Ingram's going to find a way to stay on the floor more, and of course that's the key because last year he only played, what was it? I want to say in his total number of games, I think it was 59. And so that's one thing to keep in mind. But Ingram would be a guy, and you let me know if you agree. I also think that Kyle Kuzma is going to find his way onto the floor more than people might think. And when he's out there, he's producing. He's just active. He's shooting. He's getting rid of the ball quickly. He's rebounding a little bit. So I think that Kuz is another guy that somebody might think that he's going to get lost in the shuffle a little bit of minutes, but he's a guy that I think can give you value.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a guy that sort of has a NBA profile that we know already works around LeBron James. There's sort of he's like a non-experimental person to put around LeBron, right? You can throw someone who's nails from outside and has that what I know they're talking about Mamba mentality, but like just a scorer, someone that can get a bucket when LeBron gets them open. Kuzma is that kind of guy.
Yeah, totally. Right. Exactly. And I think that his personality fits LeBron well in that sense. And, people would be surprised to hear that so does Ingram. So Ingram is a tougher guy than you might think. He's more confident than you might think. And I think that kind of thing can really help with LeBron. And then, look, KCP was a valuable player to have in the second half of last season. I think he probably will start at the 2. I think that he probably playing alongside LeBron and either Lonzo or Rondo is going to get a lot of open shots on the wing. He's going to get you a couple steals here and there. Not much in the assist department, but he actually rebounds pretty well though too for a guard. He was 5.2 last year, and this is really probably I'd say if Oklahoma City is healthy, that'd be the only other team that can rebound as well in the backcourt as this Lakers team when you combine Lonzo and Josh Hart with KCP. So yeah, there are little things that KCP does, and he did lead the team in. I shouldn't say lead. He was, I think, 3rd in the team in minutes per game, but he ended up being the leader in total minutes because he played 74 games. So it's just a couple other things to keep in mind. Yeah, it's when you have LeBron, it's kind of like what you said, Dan, at the start of this. He's going to be the guy that gets the lion's share of the stats for the team, and I think that will happen again this year. But it's really important to watch the Lakers play early in the season and even in the preseason, and that's going to probably give you a pretty good idea of who LeBron likes, who he trusts, and who's going to put up some numbers around him.
Well, I will say on the Brandon Ingram front, I've never seen a 6'9", 165-pound guy clear out space quite like Brandon Ingram has. It's impressive. Oh, so I've bugged you enough about the Lakers on this. You're a fantasy guy. Let's do a Trudell sleeper here. Let's give the people what they want at the end of this pod. Who's somebody that you're targeting maybe mid-late round that you think folks are maybe not drafting early enough?
So I like Jonathan Isaac a little bit in Orlando. I always try to get on the front end, especially in a keeper league, on a guy that's got just unique length and sort of unique skills. That's a guy that's got talent. Now, will it end up paying off right away? I'm not sure, but he was actually kind of sneaky good in the limited time that he played last year. It just so happened they didn't play much, and so that's going to be a concern again. Durability and injuries and such. But Isaac was one name that stood out to me. How about you? Give me a couple of your guys that you've been thinking about.
Yeah, I mean that was he is a guy that I have my eye on in my keeper league that I'm in. So that was interesting that you brought that one up. I don't know if it's going to pan out immediately, but it does seem like I love guys that do things in both defensive categories, and he's one of those rare types that can kind of fit that mold. I always like, Mike, I tend to look at like really old dudes with proven track records that keep falling in drafts, and these guys are like way down the list. But now that Dwight Howard is out of Charlotte, I've got my eye on Marvin Williams getting back into the 9-cat discussion. The most boring fantasy player of all time.
I was going to say, well, that'll get people excited.
I know. This is what I do. I titillate with names like Marvin Williams. But I really think that like the Dwight Howard effect is real. And him being gone from Charlotte just means that everyone has more space. The rebounds are back available again. To me, he's like a guy you could take in the very last round of a draft and could go back to being that sort of like top 80 snooze fest. But if you get a top 80 guy in the 13th, 14th round of your draft, that's a pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I mean, I also try to think of one of the things I try to think of before the fantasy basketball season starts, and candidly, I'll start my prep usually at the same time as the team start playing in the preseason, just so I can kind of watch guys, see where they're playing, and then really get into it. And now this is just sort of the tease part of it. But I'll try to think about, all right, so DeRozan leaves Toronto. The guy that's replacing him is really much more of a 3/4 in the NBA. So who does that open up minutes for? And, who was excellent last year? Fred VanVleet. Now, he didn't put up he's a little bit probably he's a better real life player than fantasy player probably, but there's space for him, I think, to operate into, and I just think he's a much better player than anybody else they have there. Of course, the question is, can they get away with playing him next to Kyle Lowry in order to get enough minutes? But same thing. Then you look at San Antonio, with DeRozan entering and Kawhi leaving. Is there somebody else on that roster that is going to be able to get minutes and produce? And, I'm not sure of that. I mean, maybe Bellinelli plays more as a shooter. Maybe Patty Mills takes some additional load. But, I think that mostly ends up going to DeRozan and Aldridge. And if you want a bunch of mid-range jump shots. So anytime that players change hands, that's what I try to do is think about their basketball fit with the team. And that usually ends up moving over to a fantasy fit as well. Because, as we know from playing fantasy, that the minutes are the most important thing. And then once you can, if you can just, and that's part of what I'm thinking with Isaac, I just think that he's a good enough player. And, I don't think Bamba is going to necessarily threaten for a ton of minutes. I think they're going to sort of have to veer away from Vucevic at a certain point. And that's the type of thing I'm thinking of. What guy could slide into this opportunity and actually, get some additional minutes?
I love it. How's your football stuff going?
Football, we always start strong in the NFL. And then once NBA season starts, my record, my win-loss record dips accordingly as I start to pay more attention to the NBA stuff. But we're in good shape right now. I think we're in for a 3-0 week this week on my various squads across fantasy.
There you go, attaboy, Mike Trudell. Thank you as always, my man. It's a massive pleasure to get you on the pod and talk fantasy this time.
Oh, for sure. The pleasure is mine. I love me some fantasy basketball. Anytime you want to talk, you know where to find me.
Oh, I'll holler at you. He is at Mike Trudell on Twitter, but you guys already knew that. Mike Trudell, fantasy enthusiast, Lakers reporter. He is all the things. Thank you again, my man.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
And of course, we attach a coupon code to every guest here on Fantasy NBA Today. We try to make it something fun, something that ties in nicely with that particular guest. And as Mike Trudell, he covers the Lakers. This one's a pretty easy one, isn't it? Coupon code is LeBron. 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 $3 off the Hoop Ball Draft Guide with coupon code LeBron. Go get it before the draft guide goes up in price again. It might be going up as early as today. Hope you got it before that thing went up. $3 off the draft guide. Coupon code is LeBron. Mike Trudell, ladies and gentlemen, coming and slumming with us here on Fantasy NBA Today. That was a lot of fun. That's always fun for me because as an Angelino, someone that you hear on your drives places, I made Not as many anymore, but working in minor league baseball, you drive from city to city. Obviously, watch the Laker games here. So this is a face that I've seen on the tube. This is a voice you hear on the radio. And then now he's on our podcast. Very cool. And a sharp cookie. I was going to call him a sharp cat. I don't know if that's probably not the right terminology. So a big thank you again to Mike Trudell, at Mike Trudell on Twitter. He's also at Lakers Reporter. That's where he does his Lakers reporting. No surprise there. But for the musings, the general musings of a fantasy junkie, at Mike Trudell is the one that you ought to follow as well. Let's talk about some mock draft results. The Hoop Ball slow mock in the forums. We talked about rounds 1 through 3 yesterday. Round number 4, we're just going to list them off. Here are the 12 names in the order selected. We will then parse them, go through them one by one. Tobias Harris selected at number 37. He's followed by Josh Richardson and John Collins. Jared Allen at number 40. C.J. McCollum at 41. Gary Harris at 42. Marc Gasol, 43. At number 44 is Aaron Gordon, then Al Horford. Jamal Murray, number 46. DeAndre Ayton at 47. And DeMar DeRozan at number 48. A couple of thoughts on this round. I do have a few. Tobias Harris at 37. Love it. Magnifique. Say magnifique. He is going to be an excellent producer all season long. His percentages are great. The only thing he doesn't really give you are big-time defensive numbers. I mean, not going to get a ton of assists out of too many forwards anyway. So that's probably not what you were going for in this round, but just so durable and so good in so many categories. Wildly underrated. Josh Richardson at 38. To me, this is a little bit early. I know he was wonderful last year, and we all love his fantasy stat set, but the health of the Miami Heat is too good right now. Josh Richardson has been coming into his own when the herd gets thinned a little bit. When Dion Waiters went down, when Rodney McGruder went down, literally half the Heat went down, and then Richardson sort of grabbed life by the horns a little bit. He's not a grab-it-by-the-horns kind of guy, and we've seen him get pushed out. The usage goes down when there are too many guys around. And Dion Waiters, my God. Usage, you want to talk about somebody who's chewing up usage where they shouldn't be? I love Josh Richardson. His stat set is outstanding. He's one of those rare fantasy guys that get you blocks and steals. Guard or forward, it doesn't matter. He's so unique, and he's going to get wedged out. And that sucks. So for me, a little bit too early. Hopefully Miami can thin things out a little bit. We shall see. John Collins at 39. That's too early. Unfortunately, that's where he's going in a lot of mock drafts right now, which eliminates his value. I mean, you're talking about a guy that is, I think, in a fantastic scenario in the 30s. But when you draft him in the 30s, that eliminates the value. There's almost no way he gets into the top 20 unless he plays all 82 games this year and goes, 30, 40 something by average and just plays every night. This, to me, eliminates the value. And same deal for the next guy, Jared Allen at number 40. He's going to play this season. He's a solid contributor. He was very good late last year. He's top 70 down the stretch last season. To assume that he's going to make this kind of leap, that's way earlier than you had to take him. Not that I don't like him. He's a guy that you're generally seeing go in the 60s and 70s. So 40... and you wipe out the value there as well. C.J. McCollum falling to 41, coming off a little bit of a down year. I really like this pick, actually. He's a proven asset. Possibility that they think about blowing things up in Portland, maybe. I think his shooting percentage comes back up a tiny bit this year. Just overall, kind of a down season. He's very durable also. And to get him in this range, guy that plays almost every night, that's nice. Gary Harris at 42. Kind of the same story, underrated a bit, coming off a very good year, but of course he does have health stuff. He's just always nicked up. One of those dudes that just can't be 100% healthy and doesn't seem to play through the, like the 70%ers. Maybe he does. Maybe this is the year where he pushes over it, but he's always got something nagging him. Love his fantasy game, though. So this, I think, is a pretty good spot for him. Marc Gasol at 43. He's a guy that's on the downturn these days. This is a team that paired him, by the way, with Kevin Love, a low field goal percentage big man. So that actually, by all accounts, kind of makes sense, although this is also the team that has, make sure I'm getting this right, I believe this is the team that has Ben Simmons and LeBron James, so that takes care of the field goal percent. Kevin Love, Marc Gasol, unfortunately not going to do enough at the free throw line to counterbalance what happened in those first 2 rounds. But it does shore up the rebounding. Well, I guess that was already pretty good. 3-pointers you get out of Kevin Love, maybe not enough out of Marc Gasol. I don't know. This is probably about where he's going to go. There is some injury concern there, but be willing to take a chance on him in this range for sure. Aaron Gordon at 44. This is earlier than I would have expected him to go coming off that kind of rough season, but as you'll hear, we talked to Philip Rossman-Reich. That episode is going to air a little bit later in the week. He's a guy that I like. I like Aaron Gordon as a bounce-back candidate coming off that slow year, guys that have their values depressed a bit. I'd like to see him picked up a little bit later than this. If I'm going to draft him, I'm not taking him at 44. But if he falls into the 50s, I am. Al Horford at 45, that's about where he should be. Nice safe play. Jamal Murray at 46. Interested to see how his season goes if the Nuggets remain fully healthy this year. He had a big opportunity last year. He did a good job of stepping through it, but they have a lot of weapons on that team. Does anybody get pushed out? Probably not. They probably play fast enough where everybody can do stuff. DeAndre Ayton at 47, that's a little too early for my taste. Rookie big man. They do have some success at times, but I mean, this is a guy that, he didn't even dominate Summer League. He's a guy that could certainly get better also as the season goes on, but I'd love to see him fall a little bit farther than this. And DeMar DeRozan at 48, yeah, that's about right. I don't know why people keep drafting him in the 30s. His ADP is always way earlier than it should be. He should be drafted around number 50. And he was. Round 5, Ricky Rubio. Nick Vucevic. He was number 50. He's always number 50. Rob Covington at 51, then Lauri Markkanen. D'Angelo Russell. Woof. Adrian, what are you doing to me, kid? Adrian, by the way, happy 11th birthday. Mike Conley at 54. Taurean Prince at 55. Blake Griffin at 56. Then Joe Ingles, Paul Millsap, Nico Mirotic, and Slow-Mo Kyle Anderson at number 60. I have thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I get the feeling that this mock draft was done and people just went a-hunting we will go. They just picked the guys that they absolutely positively had to have, but it didn't seem like anybody was too worried about ADPs or how far they could fall. I don't know that we're going to get the best information on the listener, your individual draft, because some of these guys are going way earlier than you'll need to take them. I'll point them out in this round. Ricky Rubio at 49, I'm okay with that. I think he has a decent year. Nick Vucevic at 50, risky. He's on a $12.5 million contract, and it's expiring at the end of the year on a team that drafted Mo Bamba. That makes me nervous. Rob Covington at 51, he's always better than that. No one's taken his minutes. He's one of the best defenders in the NBA. Lauri Markkanen at 52. I don't know. I'm less excited about his fantasy profile than other people. I know he's the big man that isn't terrible at the free throw line and hits 3-pointers, but there's a lot going on in Chicago. There's a lot of dudes that are going to want to take shots. And they have a rookie big. D'Angelo Russell at 53. Well, I'm on the non-D'Angelo side. I wouldn't take him at 153, but you probably should. But 53? Nobody was... Adrian, come on, man. I know you love D'Angelo. My boy, AB, you love him, but there's no reason you had to take him this early. In a 9-category, 12-team head-to-head league, this dude wasn't coming off the board for another 3 rounds. Conley at 54? Kind of surprised he went this early. Maybe that's where he's going, though. I like him, by the way. That's a risk I'm willing to take in the 50s. 5th round. If he doesn't pan out, you can survive that. If he does, you could get yourself a 2nd or 3rd round value. Taurean Prince at 55. I think that's about where he's going. 55 to 65 range. Blake Griffin, I don't have a flatulence sound effect queued up for this podcast, but I'm not taking him anywhere. And 56 is actually pretty late and pretty reasonable for a guy like Blake, but he's just always hurt. And I don't like his fantasy game, and he's moving farther from the basket. However, you could probably argue that his shooting percentage should get a little bit better. I mean, it was really awful last year. Still, blah. Joe Ingles at 57. I like that one. He's a guy that we've liked around here at Hoop Ball for better part of season and a half now. Paul Millsap at 58. He's actually been falling a little farther than that, I think, in a lot of drafts. Somebody may have targeted him needing a center, perhaps. Let's see. That's team practice. Well, no, they got John Collins on the board already. Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard. Okay, so they did need a second center. Maybe that's a slight reach here for Millsap. I've seen him fall about another half to full round from there. I like him, though. I think he's going to have an okay year, better than most people think. Nico Mirotic at 59. I'm a little bit nervous. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about Nico. A lot of big men suddenly on that Pelicans team with Randall. Of course, you got AD. They brought in Jahlil Okafor. What? I mean, Nico's going to play. Don't get me wrong, but to me, the path is not as clear as it was last year. He was the guy on the Bulls that could get away with taking the most shots. He is not going to be that guy on the Pelicans basically any night. He is, at best, a third option. And you guys know I love Nico. You know I love Nico. I stalk him. I have a beautiful spot in the tree outside Mirotic's window. Set up a little thing there. I got like a picnic, a little candle, some berries, some prosciutto, a little bread. Just hanging out by Nico's spot. Checking out how his face is healing. It's healing well, by the way. But, yeah, I'm a little bit lower on him this year. Getting him around 60, I think this is reasonable. I think he's going to be around a top 60 kind of guy. I don't think that top 40 upside is really there anymore. Not in this spot. Slow-mo at number 60. That's way too early. Even a best-case scenario, this is where he ends up. This is a guy you should be drafting closer to 100 and hope that he cracks the top 75 or 70. It's going to be good for Kyle Anderson, but it's not going to be that good. You know, this is a team when healthy. They added him because they like that he brings a whole bunch of things to the table, which is nice. You know, he's one of those guys that can have success without scoring. He's great at stealing the ball, defensive stats, rebounds, assists, that type of stuff. But, you know, Conley's going to be taking more shots. Gasol's going to be taking more shots. He's going to be doing a lot of stuff. This team then took Luka Doncic. At pick number 61, we start the sixth round. I actually think Luka could have a pretty good year. You guys know how I feel about rooks. I'm probably not taking him in any non-keeper type format, but I can't argue with it. You know, the fact that he got drafted back of DeAndre Ayton, that's fine, I guess. I'm not taking him. Simple as that. Rest of this sixth round, Doncic starts it off, then Gordon Hayward, Jeff Teague, Chris Dunn, Will Barton, DeAndre Jordan. That's the first half of the round. Second half, Jason Tatum, Jaren Jackson Jr., Dwight Howard, Hassan Whiteside, Jonas Valanciunas, and Lonzo Ball. This is a free throw deficient part of the lineup. Good gravy. Gordon Hayward at 62, if you're believing in his return, which I am not really. This is an okay spot to take a flyer on it because more than likely he'll be good, if short of great. He was one of those guys that was settling in as a nice, like, between 25 and 35 kind of fantasy guy when healthy. And so even if he gets part way to that, maybe if he's even top 45, this is still an okay grab. Question is, you know, how does his body respond? That was a gruesome injury. Gruesome. But at 62, that's fine. And if you're in a league where you might have a keeper opportunity, get him in the sixth round, maybe you could even get him in the seventh and hold on, even if this year is a little bit of a disappointment, that could work out all right for you. So I'm okay with it. I'd love it to go a little bit deeper, but I'm okay with it. Jeff Teague at 63, that's fine. That's about where he ought to be. This is, you know, crap, I didn't have enough point guards on my team. You snap one up in this spot. Because to me, this is a spot in the draft where you start to take a few small risks. The guarantees begin to evaporate right around 35 to 40. Then you've got some guys that you're pretty sure of, and then you get, we're not quite at no man's land, because these are still some pretty big names, but this is where you start to reach a tiny bit. You take the guys, this is where you start to target dudes. And to me, taking Jeff Teague, he's never a guy you target going into a draft. He's a guy you end up with when you realize, crap, I'm short a point guard. Because, frankly, the next guy taken, Chris Dunn, I think I'd rather have, just for the upside. There's a very real possibility that Teague has a better season, but he's a high floor, low ceiling kind of dude. Chris Dunn is the lower floor, higher ceiling type. And at this point, this is where you start to, you take that margin for error. Will Barton at 65. I think last year is about as good as it gets for Will. Again, the injuries in Denver freed things up for him a little bit, but this is fine. And he's kind of an across-the-board type of dude. DeAndre Jordan at 66. You know, if you're not tanking, or if you're not punting, then you leave him alone. Jason Tatum at 67. I'm one of the rare people out there who thinks Tatum might take a tiny step back this year simply because there are so many bodies in Boston. So I'm not really drafting him. I'm not looking to target Jason Tatum unless you think he's going to give you that sort of Otto Porter-like line. Jaren Jackson Jr. at 68. Adrian. Now you're just messing around. Adrian's drafting this middle stretch of this league like it's a dynasty format. Adrian, nobody was taking Jaren Jackson Jr. at 68, but we know how much Adrian loves him. This is a guy that, you know, you're going to want to own him in 2020. He's going to be dominating. But this year, there could be some growing pains. They're going to bring him along a little bit slowly. They've got other big men. Memphis is going to try to win games at the beginning of the year, and he's going to have to play his way into minutes. Dwight Howard at 69. Ugh. More punt. He actually had a really good season last year, but you will not ever win free throw percent with him on your team. He is the worst. Hassan Whiteside at 70. Wow, how the mighty have fallen. This is a dude drafted in the second round last year. Second round ADP, and now he's at 70. And for that reason, I love this pick. Even if he is terrible, which he was last year, he was still around number 70. Not too many places to go but up, as far as I'm concerned for Whiteside. He's still going to see minutes. They're better defensively, the Heat, when he's on the floor. And if somebody's willing to take him on in a trade, they're probably going to play him. So there you go. You got some upside. And he was a better free throw shooter last year than seasons past. He was up around 70%. It's not good, but it's not going to kill you. You know, I think I was 4th or 5th in my league in free throw percent with Whiteside, among other dudes. They weren't all great foul shooters on my team. I had a few good ones. Jonas Valanciunas at 71. I think that's a good spot for him. He really showed he could be truly efficient on the court last year. You don't need him out there for 30 minutes a game. If he can rock for 23, 24 minutes and give you 13 and 9, a smattering, not many blocks, but just great percentages, and he's working on the three-pointer. A lot of reasons to like Valanciunas. Not a ton of reasons to love him, but a handful of reasons to like him. And Lonzo Ball at 72. As you just heard a moment ago from the great Mike Trudell, maybe not a guy you target in the draft because he's going to go in the 6th round because of his name, but it's going to be some adjustment stuff. Some serious adjustment stuff. He's going to have to work on playing with LeBron. We never really figured out what happened with that meniscus stuff. I mean, did he have a surgery on his knee? We don't know. But as Mike pointed out, he's a guy that as he starts to get it figured out, if he can work on the field goal percent, I mean, the free throw felt like an aberration last year. He wasn't that bad. The college level, he wasn't that terrible at the foul line. Not great, but not, 45% or whatever it turned out to be. He's a guy with unlimited upside as a point guard. Steals, blocks, assists, rebounds. Knock down some threes. He's generally my kind of dream guy because he does defensive stats and doesn't score a whole lot. But he's got to get one at least of his 2 percentages straightened out somehow before I'm willing to take a shot on him. Still, there is something there. There is something there. From a fantasy perspective, we now have the evidence to say that he could put together a strong season if he's healthy and as he figures out how to play with LeBron. All right, folks, that's the next 3 rounds of the Hoopball Forum Slow Mock Draft. You want to check out the results, go to hoop-ball.com, click on the Forums tab, or if you just feel like asking a question of the Hoopball Pros, I get an email anytime a new thread gets started. I believe Eric Ong does as well. I think Aaron Brewski might, on top of all that. We've got our eyes on all of this stuff. We're always watching. So if you have a question, pop it in the forum. Someone's going to hop in there and help you out. A pro, another forum member. We are a community, and it's time to get this forum hopping again. Season's coming up. Questions are starting to surface little by little. Let's get this thing going, folks. Let's do it. Again, go get the draft guide. Coupon code, as we told you earlier in the pod, we'll repeat it here, is LeBron. $3 off. Hoop-ball.com. Massive draft guide graphic right there on the homepage. You click on that. That'll direct you to where you can buy the sucker. $3 off. Coupon code is LeBron. Once again, I just can't say it enough. A big thank you to Mike Trudell for carving out time. His schedule's about to get real busy, but we'll try to get him back on this thing. Pick his brain a little bit more as the season goes along. I am Dan Besbris. Enjoy your Tuesday, everybody. If you have a moment again, rate and review the pod. Follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris, at HoopBallFantasy, at HoopBallTweets. We'll talk at you tomorrow. Next 3 rounds of the Hoopball Fantasy Draft. The Forum Mock Slow Draft. That's coming up on the Wednesday show with... Which guest is it going to be? I've got a handful. I got a grab bag here. A goodie bag of guests. You'll just have to tune in and find out. So long, everybody.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.